A very good morning all. Thank you very much for joining. A very, very, very warm welcome on what is set to be a record-breaking day temperature-wise. I join you from Costa del Birmingham today in the sunshine. Thanks very much for joining this Acumind hosted event, the AI Readiness Conundrum: How to Turn Construction Data into Strategic Foresight. I thought just in preparation, I'd just throw that title at GPT and see what Gen I would do and put it to the test. And with very little prompt engineering, it threw back something that looked vaguely interesting. I said, make it more human. And it did. I said, make it more humorous, and there we go. And I think it shows you a couple of things. One, the power of AI, but secondly, actually, the inherent bias as well. Just looking at the images that it's pulled up there with limited prompt. In terms of the next 60 minutes, I think I said in my notes, it is jam-packed, literally. So we'll do some brief introductions before I hand over to Aaron of Microsoft, who's really going to focus in on an era of change, and Ashley at Kier then about mission control and some of the fantastic work around herding, harvesting, harnessing data in their own organization across strategic projects and then into the wider business. And then I guess the main event is when I open up to the wider panel and we get into some real life discussion about the people, process, technology challenges that we've all faced in the implementation or review of AI or general data management and reporting as well. So we've got an esteemed panel of sector specialists, everything from technologists to boots in the ground operation and transformation specialists in between. And when we get to the panel, I'll allow each speaker to introduce themselves as we head in. In terms of Acumind, for the past 5 years, we've worked with a number of organisations across the built environment, notably in the tier 1 contractor space, helping them really reach that line of performance decision. And we know as an industry over the past, certainly in my life, 3 decades, we've grown up around a whole series of business applications, a lot of them very proprietary, tying you into their own reporting capabilities. Only more recently have application program interfaces, APIs been available so that we can more readily challenge and get access to that data. And I guess what we're looking at, and maybe one of the utopian things we're trying to achieve, is to build intelligence in our own organizations in order that we can move from a picture of what happened. So that's kind of where we are today. When we think about counting the dead after the battle's over, most of our reporting that we capture, we're looking back retrospectively. And really the opportunity that sits in front of us when we talk about strategic foresight from our construction data is what will happen. And I guess that chasm in the middle is really about today's talk. How do we get from the left-hand side to the right-hand side, whether that's early stage POC and piloting, whether that's wider engagement and education across our executives to build the business case, but also from our subordinates to bring that forward. I'm sure we'll unpack those in the talk soon. With no further ado, I'll stop sharing and introduce you to Aaron from Microsoft.
In terms of introduction, my name's Aaron. I have worked, I'll say, data and AI loosely. A lot of it was just data management 15 years ago, but for about that period, for organisations such as IBM and Informatica. At Informatica, I looked after certain product lines across the UK and Ireland, mostly around the data governance and master data management space. They gave me some other bits as time went on, but that's where I started off. At Microsoft, we're data and AI specialists, and the best way, there's a reason for that. AI lives off data. So what we do in my role is we look at tactical outcomes and then try and align that to somebody's strategy and make sure they're using the best of Microsoft's tool set to do that. I'll kick off, if this works. I'll kick off talking that this is more for illustration purposes, but if we look at how things have moved generally across technology, it's moved at a decent rate and it's slowly scaled up over time, right? So we've seen significant changes over the last 20, 30 years. What we're seeing now is we're seeing an uplift in AI capability and other technology related to AI. So that's development, research, about 2x per every 6 months. And I don't want to dwell on that too much, but I thought I'd just put that as a level set. I was walking through this slide deck. Well, it wasn't this slide deck, it was just the first 2 slides plus about 20 demos and talk around yesterday with a load of business executives, so not IT people. 2 years ago, most of my time was with IT people. I'm being brought in to talk to business execs. I'm explicitly saying that because the demand on IT and the demand on data is significant. And I was very explicit at the beginning, I've got a data and AI role, right? Data is equally as important as the AI piece. And if I just step through these 3 bits, if we start looking at the fact that we can develop now universal interfaces that can actually take prompts directly or requests using any sort of mode we like. So that's whether it's vision, speech, text, against a single endpoint, that opens up the world to a load of different use cases and a lot of business efficiency. And when we start looking at the fact that the new technologies can live off memory and context, as well as we can create various agents at the back end, that now is illustrating a lot of business efficiency, like significant business efficiencies. And this is why the business is interested. And of course, when we're looking at technology from this angle, we need to go back and spend a lot of time talking to the business around their processes. Now, what that means to us as data professionals downstream is there's going to be a lot more of expected of us. And there's lots of times that we're going to have to turn around and say our data's not good enough. And sometimes people won't understand that, because I have seen lots of SaaS vendors coming in talking about AI as if it's a magic wand. It is, but you still need to know the spells and you still need to know how to wave that wand, right? And that is relationally pretty much the context of what you're using it for and making sure everything is secure underneath. So I thought I'd drop that in there. This is coming hard and fast. Lots and lots of different business units are speaking to lots and lots of different vendors and trying to make efficiencies. And the major thing holding people back is data. This is a slide that I've been using for years. This slide looks super old, and I purposely pick it out because it just looks a bit naff, if I'm going to be honest. It's my own slide that I think I borrowed and has kept through roll over time. But what I often say to people, just relating this to just a single application, not even AI, take out that ERP system is what I'll say to folk. And they'll look at this and go, well, yeah, no, our data estate looks worse than that. I say, well, the reason why you can't necessarily remove that ERP application that easily is because we don't really understand how the data is connected to it. We don't understand what architecture it really fits in, and it leans itself to now a developed over time accidental architecture. Now, these same things, regardless of structured or unstructured data, are the things that are going to slow us down with innovation and dealing with the business requirements are coming thick and fast from our various stakeholders. The other thing, which is kind of common, is, and again, I've had this same thing for the last sort of 15 years. I've got 2 reports on my desk. Both are trying to tell me that they're telling me the same thing, but they're telling me different things. That if we're taking different data from different silos, we're in essence getting to the point where we're creating confusion and distrust across the business. So not only have we got that heavy, fast, hard pressure from the business around from AI initiatives, but we've also got that constant difficulty around making sure what we're delivering to the business is trusted. So these are legacy issues that we're on our way to fixing. I suppose it's worth mentioning at this point, I've worked in the construction sector for about 3 years. Before that, it was CPG, banking, and I hear the same things from sort of the construction vertical and the built vertical that I did from the banking and CPG guys. Right? Our data is too complicated, and trust me, when we're looking at sort of things like MiFID regulations and open banking, these are equally as complex, right, and cover similar regulations and similar permissions to do these sort of things. So yes, data is slightly different, but the problems are pretty much the same. It's just looking at them from a different angle. So the verticals moved on quite a bit over the last couple of years, and what I'm talking to folk around is the idea of headless architecture. So relating back to, can I remove an application? How do I make it easy to decouple and recouple applications? So I found a cheaper, better ERP system. How do I make it as simple as possible to remove that? Well, when we look at data, it's actually harnessing the data in a central place, right? And actually making sure we love it and curate it. So if we look at the applications, they're two-way. Yeah, we're sharing and grabbing data back. And fundamentally, that makes us more agile. Oh, by the way, so I did forget this because I was changing my slides just before. I had problems with the tube on the way in. The concept of headless, if you've not heard of it before, it literally stems itself from, it first came back to me anyway when I was dealing with retailers, when they were saying, look, we can go to market in any country that we like. We just build a quick web front and then we push our data into that web front end. We deal with the logistics afterwards. So in essence, the headless part is, are we able to share our product data wherever we want to, into any distributor, into we've got to take obviously regulations of trading, but into those open countries as quickly as we see fit. So this is where headless is the ability to shape and be agile. I'm not going to go through all the use cases. These are just examples. But when I look at how do we cost and how do we figure out how do we align budget to, say, maybe a data program that makes us ready for AI and analytics at scale, there's two areas. So one is actually the cost of doing something. Right, so sorry, the opportunity cost of not doing something. So I've seen this a lot where there's something that's very strategic, but we're not ready to do it. So in essence, it just takes a long time to achieve, and/or it just gets pushed away because by the time we can execute, the problem is gone. Even though the problem was significant, it's now disappeared, and then it goes back into the back of the pile again. Until it resurfaces itself later on. The other cost area is actually the cost of doing the same thing over and over again. So when we start looking at dealing with AI, analytics, machine learning, we're often getting the same data and using it more than once for different things. Now, we might not be using exactly the same data, but we're using 70% of the same data every time. Now, if we haven't created it, sort of structured it, held it, managed it in the right way, we're just approaching the problem from scratch over and over again. And that's kind of where I wanted to go with it. And sort of finish, I was given a few minutes just to talk. But in short, if I summarize, the businesses are coming hard and fast around use cases and around AI, and especially Gen AI. We've got traditional problems that are still there. There are ways of thinking about it and fixing it. Everybody's unique. I will shout out, though, that Gen AI within our tool sets and probably other people's tool sets actually make it easier for you to execute and tackle these problems. Okay, so I think that is me at time, Stuart, if I'm about right.
Aaron, that's great. Thank you so much. I'll let you stop sharing now. Really interesting, and thanks very much for joining us this morning and battling with the fun of the Metropolitan line on your way into HQ. What we wanted to do then is to segue from that kind of global headline picture from one of the lead technology vendors in the world to something very practical that hopefully resonates with a number of you. And I'm delighted that Ashley Dawson is joining us this morning. So Ashley, I'll mute myself. I'll let you unmute and hand over to you.
Right, great. Yeah, so I'm going to talk you through the journey that we've been on in Kia with regards to getting to where we are today with something we call Your Insights, which is a centralized business reporting system that rolls out across all of our projects and allows us to centrally report on them and compare between project to project without the need for project-based reporting in silos. And I'm going to stay on that silo topic, and Aaron's already touched on silos, and it's slides aren't working. There we go. Yes, so I'm going to take us first of all back to 2018. I've been with the business for 11 years now. Back in 2018, we worked in silos, as Aaron alluded to. Our functions on our projects, whether that's procurement, commercial, design, ourselves in the digital department, we all worked relatively siloed, reporting in silos, and not necessarily collaborating on the level that we should have been, despite there being a BIM mandate that requires us to collaborate. And alongside this, we had a tech stack. Now that tech stack was very simple at that time. We didn't have loads of tools in the business. We had what we needed to function, and our tech stack looks very different today, and I'll come on to that. But having the siloed functions and these software tools, it meant that when we were reporting in isolation. And those reports were manual Word documents. You might spend a week compiling a report. By the time you've compiled that report, it's out of date. You'll be double handling data, whether that's from Excel into another Excel document into another Excel document, so that you can give it to the right person in the right format. And often the reports weren't 100% accurate. Okay, they weren't based on facts; they were based on opinions. So we had a realization, and that realization came in sort of the end of 2018, early 2019. We won a project called HMP 5 Wales. We broke ground on that project in 2019, and we finally delivered it in 2021. But this project fundamentally changed the way we worked. We realized that we had all of these softwares, and we could potentially pull the data from those softwares into one location. And we did so. And what we did was we created a set of dashboards. So we started to utilize Power BI. We had a few members of the team in-house that were fairly capable of using it. Obviously, it's very new, and there was a learning curve, but we started to dabble in it, and we pulled together for this one single project a single set of dashboards. Now, those dashboards were quite simple. In regards to, it was just pulling information from Excel files, potentially from different softwares into a central report. And there was no API usage, there was no smart intelligent updates in the background. It was all quite manual updates, but we had all this data in one place. And that was the first iteration of mission control. And that, like I said, that was sort of 2021. Now, after this project finished, we took a step back and we did our lessons learned, like we do on all of our projects. And we identified that actually, you know what, this was really good. And this was a big milestone. And the business recognized that and said, okay, well, look, we've got a number of other custodial projects. Can we take all that good work that you've done on that single project and create a master reporting for all of these? And the challenge was accepted. And we went out to the market, and we spoke to Acumine, and they came on board and joined the journey. And we went about refining and recreating the mission control that we'd created at HMP 5 Wales to cover all of these projects. So what we end up with is the same thing, but rather than having one of these dashboards for each project, you've got one dashboard for 8 projects. And that means that we can quickly compare. It means that we've got all the data in one place as a central means to report on. Now, with that came challenges. Data quality was probably the biggest one, and software restrictions around API usage and what data we get access through those APIs, because we're now not pulling data via Excels. We've now dived into the world of API connections so that we're not having to manually update anything. Refreshes built into this system so that we can at 6 a.m. every day come into the office and say, okay, well, this is what it looks like today. Great. Not only are we saving time, we're actually getting live data. But it meant that we had to standardize our data, and that's one big piece with all of this. And Aaron alluded to it with regards to the use of AI. And we've got to have good data in, good data out. If you feed AI poor data, you're going to get poor data back out of it. So we're quite fortunate in the fact that we've gone through this journey in sort of 2021, 22, 23, and we've got to a place where we've got standardized data coming from our tool set. And over the years, that tech stack has changed, and that's grown phenomenally, in fact. And it looks more like that now. I showed you the slide before. We've got a huge tech stack, and we've standardized the way we use these tools. It's not just that we use these tools, we use them in a specific way to generate data in a specific manner so that it feeds these dashboards. because that's the only way that we can get to the position where we've got standard centralized reporting. And just going back to this slide and talking about the other challenges that we had was the people, and bringing our project teams along the journey. It's a big change going from a Word report to a report which is very factual and less opinionated. And that was a change that took many years, and it took quite a few different projects, but we're now there, and the business has completely accepted that this is the new way of reporting. And that leads on to today. And last year we launched Your Insights, and Your Insights has ultimately changed the way the whole business works. Now, this isn't now working on 7 or 8 custodial schemes. This is working on every project across Kier Construction. I should have said at the start, I work for strategic projects, so we focus on all of the major builds across Kier, valued between sort of 100 and probably £1 billion. But this dashboard reporting will work on smaller schemes down at the value of £500,000. And the idea is that doesn't matter which project you work on, you report through Your Insights, and the business has a standard way of looking at this and a standard way of assessing how our projects are performing. And it has ultimately changed the way we work as a business, and it will continue to evolve with AI. And I think that's me, Stu.
We move on to what I will bill as the main event. But what I'd like to do is I'll just get each of the speakers to introduce themselves as I see them on screen. So, Tom, if I can start with yourself.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thanks, Stu. Tom Loader, Group Head of Digital Transformation for Multiplex. For those that don't know what we do, we're a contractor working out of Australia, Canada, and the UK.
Thank you, Tom. Nelly, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Nelly Shmesi-Mensah. I specialise in business change with a particular focus on digital transformation in traditional industries like construction. My background is in construction project management, and I've spent the last sort of decade of my career implementing and embedding change in large construction consultancies.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nelly. Jordan.
Thanks, Stuart. Jordan, I'm MD of, MD of Corey Construction. We're a £70 million regional main contractor. As MD, I sort of wear many hats, but I guess what's relevant today is I've been heavily involved in shaping our digital strategy and our data strategy over the past sort of 2 years.
Thank you, Jordan. We'll reintroduce Aaron.
Aaron, Microsoft data and AI specialist, 15 years looking at technology around data management.
Thank you. And lastly, Ashley, reintroduce your role again.
Thanks, Stu. Ashley Dawson, digital construction lead for Kier Strategic Projects. I've been with the business now 11 years. We predominantly focus, we're a tier 1 contractor focusing on the delivery of projects valued between 100 and £1 billion, 100 million that is, and £1 billion projects.
Fantastic. Well, I'll kick off. I'll kick off with an opening question, and Jordan, I'll maybe direct this to you first. How do you assess where your organisation sits on the digital and data maturity curve, and do you know when you're ready to scale an AI-driven approach?
Yeah, so it's probably worth us sort of explaining where we are on our data journey. We're probably sort of, I'd say, around about 1/3 of the way in. So we have a roadmap. Our roadmap is split departmentally in terms of how we get our data from digital silos into a single lakehouse. We assess that on a weekly basis with the management team as to where we are. And we've done around about 1.5 departments now. Our view in terms of when are we going to start implementing AI approaches, once we've got all of our data in a unified platform is when we feel that we'll be ready to start using AI. I mean, in certain instances, I think there are some software platforms out there now that are using Copilot. So Gen AI is being used to a degree, but to use machine learning, we need to know that our data is right and it's unified and in a single platform.
Brilliant, thanks, Jordan, and that's fantastic. Look, from my perspective as an SME contractor, if I can call you that, I know that you're hovering around that 100 million turnover mark, which is
that's fair, I think. Yeah,
it's fantastic in terms of the approach that you're taking. Perhaps just to scale that out, then, Tom, what does it look like in multiplex across the globe from your perspective?
Yeah, I think we don't formally measure maturity as such, right? So it's from my perspective, it's really around, are we providing that staff base with the best possible environment for them to deploy their skill? And from my role, if you like, is to provide that environment. And I guess to put a title on it, we're probably still at the foothills overall, because there's a big mix of it's a later question, I think, but culturally across the business, it's a very different approach to how people trust data that they have, from notebooks at one end to a big pull in the AI direction at the other end. But we've had a significant investment over the last 6 years, and looking at Ashley's work in terms of mission control with a similar type of environment to that across our projects, it's taken a significant investment. But we still have the same problems that a lot of firms will have of any scale, is that we have too many operational technologies still in existence, too many unconnected products that sit in the estate. So although we've got some investment, especially with Microsoft, actually, we have a good relationship with Microsoft in the and looking into the agentic AI piece, which fits well with contracting, I think. We still have messy data sitting around. We still have a lot of software rationalization that we have to do. But on the whole, we've made a start. Foothills, but we've made a start.
Brilliant. Aaron, agentic AI, what does that mean?
Agentic AI. Well, that took me half an hour to explain to people yesterday.
You've got 30 seconds.
In 30 seconds, data agents. Conceptually, when we talk about agentic AI, it is a specialist bit of AI that is doing a task. When we start expanding that, we can then have multiple agents working together. So you'll have an ITP. If you think of an ITP process, for instance, you might have somebody who's assessing the client's requirements. You might have somebody assessing BSI requirements, yeah, and then you might have someone drawing that together, and then someone reviewing that in real time. We can have various agents that are specialists in that. But then what's cool is we can have agents monitoring the agents, if that makes sense. So this is AI working together collaboratively as a team. It's probably rather than saying what it means, I kind of want to lean into more what it is, if that makes sense.
I won't get you to explain ITP, but we've hit the TLA acronym klaxon already, so well done.
Inspection, test and plan, no?
Thank you. Nelly, Tom mentioned at Multiplex that they haven't really looked at digital data maturity measurement. In your experience on transformation programs, is that something that you've sought to do?
Definitely. I think that as an industry, generally, we are a bit of a mixed bag when it comes to maturity. And depending on the organisation, some organisations are quite along the way in terms of their understanding of what it all means. And I think that from a transformation perspective, and in my experience, what we tend to try and do is actually, let's start with the basics. Let's start with some foundations. What's the strategy? How are you planning on doing this? How are you planning on getting the technology you need? Are you going to buy? Are you going to build? Are you going to partner? Have you got all of your data in one place? Is that data good? Is it clean? I think starting from some of those foundational level questions oftentimes helps organizations start to go, oh, actually, perhaps we're not ready for AI, or we're not ready for a fancy, new tech that I saw at this convention, because actually our foundations aren't in place. And I think another really key question when we talk about maturity is, are the people in your teams ready for this thing? Are you meeting them at where they are? Because if you've got teams who are still using, who are still making drawings on a piece of paper as opposed to using AutoCAD, you are quite a ways away from the skill set you need to be able to use some of these tools. So I think it's definitely a maturity piece, but it doesn't have to be a long drawn out thing. It can be starting with some really simple foundational level questions, and that will help an organization start to assess their maturity.
Brilliant. I guess related to that, I've been around the industry for 30 years, and there were days back in the Wild West when project directors, project managers had a lot of procurement choice in their projects, bring the people, the subcontract suppliers and tools that they wanted onto their projects. And probably to Ashley's earlier slide there of the myriad of different applications, and similarly to the one that Aaron showed, is probably why from the explosion of desktop computing kind of back in the mid 90s to the advent of the internet, email, mobile phones, we've got these comms and data everywhere. And I think we've probably arrested that. I think businesses have generally woken up, even all the way up to an executive level. And Ashley, if I could ask, just even from your perspective, I guess if I say this as a little bit tongue in cheek, but in the ranks over 11 years, how do you believe even Mission Control and or Your Insights got sponsored at an executive level into the business?
Yeah, Mission Control, as I described earlier, it is organically grown. Okay, so really small on one project, proving a concept, showcasing that, and having something physical to be able to show senior leadership and say, look, this is what we could be doing across on a larger scale, and these are what the benefits could be specifically to Kia. Not seeing a generic, oh, we could be doing a super scale reporting system that some other company in oil and gas or in banking have already done. Seeing it specific to Kia and seeing it specific to a project that Kia have delivered, that is an immediate buy-in. And like I said, it has changed the way we've worked. I think the one piece for me, and what everyone's sort of alluding to, but I don't think anyone's really said it yet, is it's all about standardizing data that we capture, right? If we're going to use AI, we need to make sure that the data that we're giving AI is decent. If we can't capture sensible standard data, we can't be thinking about using AI yet. Okay, so I think the journey that we've been on to get to Your Insights, Mission Control, we've looked at the softwares that we use, we've looked at the data that we capture on projects, and we're trying to standardize it. Now we're standardizing that data, we can start to analyze it and do further things with it.
Thank you. And Jordan, from your perspective, you're managing director. Maybe you don't have to convince anyone else, but look in the mirror on executive decisions. But what's important to you when thinking when you started your own data strategy and then investment?
Yeah, I'll touch on. I just want to quickly respond to what Ashley just said there, which he actually said when he spoke earlier, which is super important in making sure that you get this data piece right. It's using specific tools in a specific way to make sure that the data is right. If that comes before even considering the data piece. If your processes aren't in place, it makes the data very hard. And I think that's why our data journey's been, over the past 4 or 5 months has been relatively pain-free, because we are actually a process-driven business, and that's fitting quite nicely into what we're doing with our data architecture now. But it's super important. In terms of who did I have to convince? Well, it was myself. I think we need to move away from creating a business case that's all driven through cost. Having a data-driven approach is just the right thing to do, and I don't think you need to convince people of that. Businesses need to make, particularly in construction where margins are so thin, we need to make sure that the decisions we make are right, and those decisions need to be factual, based on data, not based on opinions. And we've touched on that a lot. I think lots of previous reporting in construction businesses have been opinion based. we need to make sure data is easily accessible. We need to make sure that you can access it quickly and it's right. And I think we need to move away from creating a cost-based analysis of whether data is the right thing to do. If the money's in the overhead to do it, then it's the right thing to do. So push forward. That's the way we looked at it.
Brilliant. Aaron, a few months ago we talked about upstream value. Just yesterday you were with some executives. How do you communicate that upstream value when you're driving through all of these change initiatives that take a lot of sweat equity as well as pounds, shillings and pence to get over the line and get started?
Yeah, so first I want to go back a bit to what the guys have said. So one thing I have spotted is we are seeing in our vertical SaaS vendors coming out with their equivalent to co-pilots, right? And they are designed to be co-pilots, and I can tell some of the guys are using some good ones already that we have. But when you're seeing SaaS vendors rock up to various stakeholders, they're seeing the outcome and they're going, wow, that's fantastic. They might even invest in it. But because the data's not in a good state, when you actually hand it over to the specialist team, they look at it and they go, that's as good as having an M365 co-pilot without any tuning. It's that state. So there, to everybody's point, the thing that I'm seeing when we're going through the upstream piece, where we're starting to look at the use case, develop, deploy, look at the technical outcome, the initial vibe is from a lot of SaaS applications that aren't really meant for our space, that say they are, that's the outcome we're seeing. And then we're even seeing that when we go through dev, test, UAT, but we work on enhancing those. But in terms of upstream, tackling use cases. So often when we look at AI outcomes, everybody, I kind of mentioned it, I think, in my slide deck, right? So when we look at measuring outcomes, people often go, I want a form automatically done, or I want to understand this one thing in a dashboard. When you start unpacking that, and this has happened throughout my career, it's like, well, you want a real-time dashboard. How often do you need that? I need that 3 times a year. And trust me, 6 years ago it was a lot more difficult to do it than it is today. But you can see that there's some impact, but it's worth tens of thousands in terms of return and it costs more to put in. So the ROI is not significant enough. What I tend to do, because half of my job, as I said, is sat down with technical people working on strategy, and half of it is working with the business, is to really pull at those threads and understand what the upstream impact is. So I was doing something around ESG a while ago. There are webinars out there. I think there's something on a hack that I was involved in, but there's a particular use case where we actually found an ROI of something like 200,000 just by automating something. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but when we started unpacking what the upstream impact was, which was winning more business, the opening of markets, it became a multi-million-pound opportunity, even when we were just going, let's increase that number by 0.1 or 0.5, and we found multiple different areas. So what I'd say to people is, if they're looking at doing a data program, they do cost cash, they cost time, skills, investment, technology. Start looking at what the opportunity actually is, as opposed to just what the tactical win is. I always say to people with AI, it doesn't really matter where you start, just as long as you know where you want to end up. And where you want to end up is with a decent data landing zone that you could just subscribe to for different use cases over time. So to everybody's point, data in a good spot.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm going to kind of a double-headed question. I'll probably go to Nelly and then Tom. ROI used as a lever, probably just to justify justify an expense or an investment versus upstream value. Have you got involved in those type of business case discussions yourself?
Yes, I have been, and I think oftentimes, what everyone said is so true. Looking at the upstream rather than just the cost in the initial. When we talk about return on investment, I think we do absolutely agree. We need to get away from just the cost. Some of the things we sometimes don't talk about is talent retention. Because actually the thing that sometimes we miss out on is you look at your competitors, you look at the field out there, and your teams are going to say, what are we doing? And so sometimes the return on investment isn't just a cost one, it is about talent retention. Sometimes it's about sort of competitive advantage. Because in reality, I think sometimes we get a bit myopic in construction because we're all generally sort of behind in terms of tech. I think BSI's report last year gave us a 1.9 out of 5 points for our AI readiness as an industry. We were 6 out of 7. So I think that sometimes we kind of compare to each other and say, well, we're slightly better than our competitors, and so that's okay. But I think if we sort of start talking about return on investment beyond just how much slightly better are we than our competitors and compare ourselves to some of the bigger the industries that are ahead of us, I think that's when those return on investment conversations become more about just how much is it going to cost now, and focusing really on what the upstream impacts will be on our teams, I think is another thing we don't do enough. Because in reality, you're not just bring in a new tool or a new AI in to increase your efficiency. Actually, one of the considerations should be our teams. How much easier are their lives on a day-to-day basis? How much are we freeing them up to be able to spend time with clients and do even more than do even more with less time, with more time? And so I think some of those return on investment conversations, I tend to try and move it away from cost. We focus on cost. Cost is important. We can't get away from it. But I think bringing some of those items as well into the discussion helps elevate it from just numbers.
Brilliant, thank you. And Tom, from your perspective, does everything get reduced back down to a per laptop charge when the justification of change initiatives comes through, or can you address that conversation differently with your executive level peers?
Yeah, I think cost is important, of course. I'm not sure who mentioned it, but of course it's a thin margin environment, and we don't have big pots of R&D budgets that we can play with, but that being said, one of the things that I've found really works with fellow execs is that they put a lot of trust in their teams, right? It's 2,500 people that have got to work productively, and if you can just turn that needle slightly in their productivity to eke out 0.1, 0.2 extra% margin on a job is quite significant in this market, or at least get the surety that you're gonna make some money out of a project. But I think one of the bits that really seems to resonate is that, and I think a bit to Nelly's point, is not just the productivity of people, but actually the enjoyment they have while they're working with you, right? So happy staff, productive staff. And if you tackle something very specific, which is the culture of late working and weekend working that exists and the impact that has on people's home lives and families, that really resonates when we're putting cases together. Because if we can take 2-3 hours a week out of a role in terms of automation or just taking that time out in another way, it might mean that someone doesn't have to work a Saturday, and that's a real tangible impact on someone's life. And I think we mentioned about retaining good staff and keeping churn at a reasonable level in a business. It all rolls into that piece, and that actually becomes the primary driver, in a sense, to why we do it.
But human behaviour and mindset, then, just kind of moving it on. Ashley, what have Kier done to help upskill, educate, and bring people on the journey? And that could be about technology, it could be about data standards and the importance of, in the words of NEMA, or what were formerly called the UK BIM Alliance, everybody is an information manager. Where are Kier on that training and upskilling journey?
So we have developed an AI policy, and that balances both risk and opportunity with the use of AI. We need to make sure as Kier, fundamentally, that when we're using AI and benefit from the use of AI, that we don't scupper security, because security is paramount. We hold Cyber Essentials, we hold ISO 27001, and we hold a number of other contractual requirements with clients that we cannot breach. Okay, and it's important that we can give our employees the tools to be able to use AI and Copilot, etc. But we need to make sure that they're doing it in the right way, and they're making sure that they're not 100% reliant on it, because we know that AI currently isn't always 100% accurate.
Brilliant. And Jordan, you mentioned 1.5 departments through on the journey. You've got a different challenge, I guess, at scale that some of the bigger organisations online here have got dedicated teams all the way up to an executive board level that have responsibility to support and champion and budget and empower people to deliver training. How are you bringing the good people at Corey along on the journey with you?
Yeah, well, I think one of our weaknesses, which you mentioned there, the amount we have to invest is probably also one of our strengths in terms of our size. It's easier for us to structure our data. We've got less projects, less people. We are quite process driven. In terms of bringing people along, I think it's about communication. And communicating properly to the teams. We've been through this journey from a not data point of view, but from a HSEQ point of view, and we look at all these head office functions, the head office as a support function of our construction sites. Our data team our data and digital team is a support function of the construction sites. And whilst we're in our infancy with the data piece, it's all about communicating that out correctly to our teams and why we're doing it and how it makes their lives easier. I think these guys have mentioned it already, and it's again another super important point. If you can make people's lives easier, they want to work for you. Construction is very challenging. All roles in construction are difficult. If you can make people's lives easier through the use of tech and data, it helps you retain talent. But yeah, communication's key. Making sure people understand why and how it's going to help them.
Just not something I'd necessarily rehearsed you as a panel on beforehand, but I read a report. A international law firm, Hill Dickinson, well over a thousand lawyers and legal professionals in that business. Just in one working week alone, they had 32,000 hits on ChatGPT unsolicited. They had over 50,000 on Grammarly before, to Ashley's point there, they started to think about an AI policy. What challenges is that bringing your business? Is that bringing your business, or do you foresee that? And I'll just ... Some of these Copilot or AI agentic or search capabilities are now seeding into every business application, and we don't know where that data is stored. We don't know where it's processed. We don't know who's necessarily got access to it, but we might be putting a lot of client confidential, even critical national infrastructure information from our businesses into those environments. Who'd like to lead on that? So, Ashley's hovering. Aaron's hovering. Sorry.
I was going to say, so I was working with a few people the minute it came out, locked it down. And what we did before Bing Enterprise Copilot, I think at the time, came out, which is basically a free way of using ChatGPT in a secure way. So within the Microsoft ecosphere, you can keep it as controlled as you like, and it's on your tenant, but it's built in with sort of like a Bing type search. Because if you go into Bing, you pretty much got OpenAI anyway, openly. But yeah, so that wasn't quite out. So we literally deployed GPT 3.5, I think at the time, within a controlled environment for just that's where you use it, and they locked everything off. But straight out the gate, I had a number of different clients just locking that down, and they were really quick, easy programs. But yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. There was all these, I don't know whether they're true, where some models and some other people's types of models are actually learning off your data. I'll leave that to the press and to their own declarations of what they're doing with information. But yes, it was a good reaction from a number of people I work with.
Tom, is it a real threat for Multiplex to be concerned about right now?
Well, we took that decision towards September last year. We knew that there was a lot of ChatGPT usage and Claude usage and things like that were happening and that's not a bad thing unto itself, really. I think I quite like the fact that people are exploring this space, but business decision wise, we deployed Copilot Chat across the business in February time. And it's seen a decent uptake, but I will be honest. We do have a fair amount of feedback from staff that will say I don't get the same experience as ChatGPT, etc. But it's a business decision on security that's led to that, and will continue to improve the training around how to get the most out that product, because that's really it. People say, "Oh, I can't," but then you just got to learn how to prompt well and get the most out of it. So I think it's a training thing, but that's where we are.
And are you thinking already about? I showed the future view rather than counting the deads after the battle's over, predictive analytics, looking at strategic foresight, and even looking at data that you're curating right now to create data products for the business, or maybe even for your supply chain. Is that something that you're thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're putting a lot of store on things like self-service at the moment, looking at what that can give us, the way that people are kind of digesting their data. We've gone 6 years with a fairly fixed dashboarding environment for projects, and that's iterated probably on V3s now for most of those. But there's more of a demand for people getting a curated set of data that they want at that given time on the fly, and definitely introducing more leading indicator and prediction into those systems generally, rather than it being mostly lagging. So it's an exciting body of work, and the agent piece really comes into that as well over time, to bring a level of automation as well to some of that process.
Brilliant. And Nelly, have you been around projects, similarly, where it's kind of a double-headed question for you, where information security has been an important factor, number one, and secondly, as to Tom's point there, you're thinking about data products, and you're looking to the future at lead indicators and getting a better steer on those things that are important to you. And maybe the federation of data gives you new insight to steer away from problems before they occur.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think similar to what Aaron mentioned, in my experience, because it became such an everyone's talking about it, everyone's using it. So actually, a lot of organizations just went, actually, we'll shut it down for now, and then let's pick one in our tenant that's secure. And I think those conversations are important. I think where organizations need to be really clear with their teams, though, is to show what they are planning on doing. Because back to that staff retention piece, back to making people's lives easier piece, if you shut down ChatGPT, for example, but you don't provide any other alternatives, they're just going to work around it. And so I think some of those conversations have been around, how do we make sure our data and our clients' data is secure, but also that we are still forward thinking and moving ahead. And I think, on the data piece, it is really important again, and I'll go back to strategy. What is it that you are trying to do? Because just collecting the data for the sake of the data doesn't oftentimes lead you to any useful insights. But then also having a clarity on each of the teams, what they use the data for, how they use that data, and what's the easiest way for them to input that data in. Because it's one thing to get all of your historic data and clean it. It is quite another to continue to capture that data as we go through. So I think that kind of forward look of how do we make this as easy as possible for people to continue to give us this information is really key to be able to move forward.
Fantastic, thank you. I'm just glancing down to the corner of my screen. I can see we're in the final few minutes, and we have a few questions come in. Actually, there's one specifically for you, and from the roles that I've held in industry, I know it is a real problem. So Jim Whitby asks, a lot of the data curation is generated through your suppliers and subcontractors, and in his experience, it's often of a lesser quality than you might need. How do you handle that?
It's all around upskilling. Education is key, and documenting what we need clearly and defining that early doors so that the supply chain know from the point of appointment exactly what they have to provide. And we have honest conversations with them. If we think that they're sort of new to the journey of data and they're not really fully engaged with why we're trying to do this, we'll have sessions with them. We'll get them to understand the need for this and why it's so important. And if they don't know how to produce it, we'll show them how to. And that's a two-pronged sword. Is in a way, we help them for them to help us. And that's the only way we can do it. We've got to all be on one team here.
Should there, open question from me related to that, should there be a single industry body who's providing that education? I hark back to Egan, Latham, Avanti, 1192, ISO 19650, just in the world of BIM standards, and where the UK BIM Alliance, or NEMA now, sits with the UK BIM framework and the education that they bring. Who should be helping us and helping the industry, the wider industry, right down to man in van who's supporting at the lowest level of operation on sites? Who should be helping upskill from a data and information deliverable perspective? Anyone wants to take that?
Just a quick one on that. I think, and in previous times, as part of some of those BIM Alliance groups, and the problem is when we're trying to solve an industry problem, it becomes too big, right? And I think if individual firms, focus on the quality of their data, the tools they're bringing to their staff and their supply chain, you kind of get a more organic growth of that skill set happening naturally anyway. I think it's one of the problems we've had is we've tried to solve too big a problem before, and you're better off just, I mean, there's obviously things like apprenticeship levy to fund some skills in businesses, which is good, but all you can do really is have the most action in your own business and share that readily. I think it's a personal opinion, but I think that's the right way to go.
Would you like? Sorry, Aaron.
Sorry, that was a cough, but
but
it's fine. I'd say a couple of things I tend to do with my clients. I do what I call think AI sessions. So it's where I sort of say, right, we've got all this technology. These are the things that it can do. Some of the things I bring is IP that I've developed for the industry. Some of them I have to be quiet about because that's what my clients have developed. But I just try and bring people up to a level of understanding of what AI can do. Then that pushes it back into the teams. I mean, virtually the team on the call, for them to understand, it brings them closer together. And then to Tom's point, start learning together around what the business wants to do. Because right now, the AI capability is driving USPs and IP, which is a competitive edge. So people try and keep it close. And of course, the sooner they can get some of these things done, the sooner they are saving 1% or 0.5% or 0.1% margin on a project. It's one of those. So generally, I just do an AI. What is AI? Think AI sessions. That's half of what I was doing yesterday with the guys, and it just stimulates concepts and ideas and priorities. But, sorry.
Thank you. Final comment, Tom. We'll let you say your Cheerios. Any final comments to leave the group before you go?
Oh no, not particularly. It's been a really good, engaging chat. Good to have people, and I think we just keep this conversation going over the next few years, because there's so much potential for the built environment to harness these tools to just build better and make a bit of money out of it along the way. So it's all good.
Thank you, Tom. Nelly, from you, any final parting comments?
Just that there is a lot of work to do, but I think we need to chunk it down. Let's not try and boil the ocean, because we're not going to be able to do anything and get anything done. So let's focus on the people and let's chunk it down.
Ashley, thank you, Nelly.
I think, to reiterate kind of what Tom said, just we need to grow organically, but then share what we do. Do sessions like this to make everything that we do visible to everyone, so that they can learn from what we've done, because ultimately we've gone about it one way, someone else might go about it a slightly different way, and there might be benefits to that, and that saves us having to do it twice.
Brilliant. And Jordan?
I very much agree with what Ashley's just said. That was exactly what I was going to say. I mean, I've learned some things on this call that I'll definitely take away. Contractors often like to work in their own silo and not talk to other contractors, particularly at the regional level. It might be slightly different at the tier 1 level, but we don't talk and we don't share our problems, and that, I think, that slows down. It slows down industry progression. So the more we can talk about this, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
In the words of the old BT ad with Bob Hoskins, it's good to talk. Aaron, I don't know if you're still there. You may be getting exited out of a meeting room. Any final comments?
Not really. I think there's the good summary of opinions on the call, but I'll say, look, you don't. I have a variant view on we can get started on AI. It's just we have to make sure that we've got a direction of travel with the way we're going to treat our data, and we focus on that as strongly as we focus on the AI use cases. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well,
fixing your data is a never-ending journey, especially for some very, very large traditional organisations. But I do need to drop. People are asking me to leave, but good to see everyone. Cheers. Thanks.
Well, look, in terms of final wrap-up and comment for me, thank you so much to all our speakers that have joined us. Thank you for the audience for coming along. Those that asked questions, apologies that we didn't get to all of those, so I will make sure that we respond. We try and make at Accumine these webinars as insightful and interesting as possible, but we do welcome your feedback. So please do offer that. And if there's anything that you would like to discuss or learn more about, I'm all ears, and we'll look to curate a similar panel discussion or content in future. I'll bid you all farewell. Enjoy the sunshine while it lasts. Thanks very much for joining, and have a great day. Thank you.